So we talked about a ridiculous number of different properties I want to consider. Part of it is looking at the life cycle of development. As I said, this class is about the software development life cycle. And we want to understand for realizing this project, build versus buy, much of it's the same. We're still writing requirements. We're still doing design. In one case, we're designing for implementation. The other case, we're designing for analysis. We're doing analysis of how do we integrate this thing and meet the requirements. But in both cases, we have to design. In both cases, we have to do testing. Maybe different levels or focus of testing. So given all that, how do we move to a decision? We can't just say, hey, we'll pay for it. We'll take the cheaper one or the more expensive one. There's a lot of factors we want to consider. We need to look at both tangible things we can put numbers to, and intangible things to really understand the best accountability for which decision we make. Be able to defend our decision later on. Now, it only makes sense to start with money. Money always matters. If something costs way more than the other, it's less likely to be chosen. It's really an uphill battle to have a system that costs significantly more for the same or most of the same functionality to say, yeah, we really should pay more for this system. And costs is something that has many different factors. And if you don't look at all the costs, then you could really do yourself a disservice. You could say, oh, this is a cheaper solution, and it ends up costing more. Open source software, free software, often has a full cost of ownership that is as big or greater than purchase software, depending on what purchase software you're talking about, because of the nature of it, because of the nature of the system, and how, depends on what the open source software is. We can give some examples as we go, but we want to understand all these factors. So the upfront cost is the purchase cost. This is where open source software is great. Purchase cost is zero, but the installation release cost can be greater. The nice thing is when I purchase software, it typically comes with some level, especially big software, some level of support for getting the software installed, set up, and released the first time. So we have to consider that cost, and then the cost of training. Open source software can be expensive because sometimes there is no training that exists. Where most big software, if you're going to install an Oracle database or a ERM tool or something big like that, often part of the sales package is getting many seats at several weeks of training that you want your folks to be able to have. We will, in order to get your contract, give away these very valuable $3,000 training classes, which really there's a person that gets paid $1,000 to go teach the class, and there's 30 people in the class, so it doesn't really cost them all that much. But it sounds like a great package and is mutually beneficial because they want you to have people who understand their software. They want you to fix problems without having to come and call them to do that because they want the product to be something that you like and use. And so that's part of the upfront cost, is understanding how much do I have to pay for it, how much does it cost for me to get it into my system and have people on our side who know how to use it. Now, the long-term cost you have to consider is, as I said, the paying for it over and over again, the licensing cost. Is there an annual fee? Do I have to upgrade per version? When do I pay you and how much do I pay you? Who does the administration and maintenance, patches, all those sorts of things? Who's doing those things? Who's installing them? Do I have to have a consultant that comes in every 6 months to install this stuff if I don't have a regular IT staff sitting around? How do I basically balance out the needs of my solution and my implementation of the solution versus the organization that sits around? The bigger the company, the easier they can get away with it because I have people sitting around doing a lot of different stuff. A small company who has a small staff maybe doesn't want to hire people to manage the stuff full time, so I have to consider part-time assets or having a person have to be very, very jack of all trades sort of thing to be able to manage all of it. Now, there's also the question of less measurable cost of opportunity costs, where what is the cost of not being able to customize your software? So are there business process costs for getting a report that doesn't do exactly what I want to? Every time I get the standard report out of the system, I've got to pay somebody to spend a half a day to turn it into the report I need. There's a cost right there. So what's a half a day's salary every week, every month, every quarter, whatever it's going to be for the rest of the time? That's the lack of being customized. There's a cost to that. But then the flip side of that is if I build something, what's the opportunity cost while I'm waiting for that thing to get to market? One great example is Android and iPhone apps. A lot of banks in particular and other big companies paid small companies to build applications, or more likely to customize their existing applications to get a iPhone or an Android app up and running right away. Because their perception was, if they didn't have an iPhone app, and so if my credit union doesn't have the same iPhone capability that Big Bank does, then people will go to Big Bank instead of my credit union. And so the opportunity cost there is however many hundreds or thousands of accounts that I would have had that I no longer have because I didn't have this thing. There's a real cost to that, or at least a perceived cost to that. It might be real, it might be just a fear cost, but it's a number that can be quantified and put together. And so if you say it's going to take us a year to build the software, well, what's the cost of not having that software for the next year or 9 months or whatever it would be, the difference in those two? That's something that must be accounted for. It's something that must be measured. Now, control is a big non-measurable factor. It's an intangible factor that I need to consider, because custom software might be slower. In order to be able to get customizations, it might be riskier to even get. Maybe you can't get something customized. I mean, I work for a very big company, and we have vendor software in my area that, even though we're the biggest customer they have, they will not customize it, because everybody else, the small people they have, we're the biggest they have by far, but all the small people they have add up to more business, more money than we do. So why would they risk everybody else for something that we want specifically? Yes, we're a big single fish, but they've got a lot of other smaller fish to pull from, and all the other small fish way more than we do. So even if you're a big fish, and particularly if you're a small fish, you might not get the customizations you need. So by building your own software, you fit exactly what you want. And that might be a competitive advantage to your business. Now, in time tracking software that's used by HR, there's probably not a competitive advantage to that, but there could be. It could be that we get the best people because we don't burden them with silly time tracking. We do something customized, but it might not be. But you get what you want on your timeline when you can build your software your own. But the flip side of that is you might not be getting their expertise. If what you're doing is building it, part of the reason you're buying it is because you want the best people in the world out there. So, for instance, I might go to Google to use their search capability because they have people who do nothing but optimize search, where even if we did a really great implementation, by the time we're finished, it's probably going to be out of date. And so you get somebody else's great work, and then they're taking the risk on it. They've already taken the risk on realizing this thing, as opposed to you taking the risk. If it doesn't work, you might be in trouble. That's where the expertise comes in. Do you have the expertise in your company to be successful? Is this expertise key to your business? If you are not a company that focuses on payroll systems, why are you building payroll systems in-house? If your company's job is to sell paper, you don't need to have your own customized HR systems. It's okay to buy that. If your company is a great IT company, maybe you want to build that yourself because you can get it cheaper, you can support it better, you can have better solutions, but that's why we make these trade-offs. So do you want to hire people and keep them around to build and improve this product forever? Or is this a one-time expenditure? Because you can't build custom software and then fire the people who built it. Software always requires something to be changed, something to be maintained, something to be updated. So if it's a non sequitur to your business, it's not what you do, and there's others who are better at it, and they've solved it in better ways, it's probably a better idea to go with them, because the long-term costs become something else. And again, it's not something you don't want your business people running around trying to answer questions on something that's not making you money, inevitably. Even if it's saving you money, it's only going to save you money at one point in time. Sometimes you got to just take the hit and spend some money and go from there. Another big thing there, again, is time frame. Again, this does factor into cost like we talked about, but when is the solution needed? The timeline of when it's needed can really change matters. Is there enough time to build something customized? Maybe I don't need it for a while, and so there's no reason for me to buy it right now and sit around on a license for something. But to do development properly, it takes time. I need to have the time to go through the cycle. Purchases tend to be quicker, but not instantaneous. So if you say I need something tomorrow, well, how quickly can I work through the contracts and get something approved, paid for, and installed? Then the flip side of that is, how long do we need the solution? It might be a long-term thing that's going to be around for a really, really long time, but we still need something right away. And so maybe we can be strategic about it. And in our tactics, as we buy something, and this was done, as I gave the example, with a lot of the Android and iPhone apps, we buy something to get out there for the next year or two until we build something and then replace what we bought with that. So we sign a contract, but maybe it's just a 1 or 2 year contract until we get our own solution out there. Maybe we try out the market and see if it's working and people are really liking it before we buy it, just spend all the time building our own solution. And that gives us time to build expertise, to get the environment set up, to put the right team together, and be able to come up with good solutions there. So given all those things, the best thing we can do is turn it into some level of numbers. I don't want to make everything about numbers because not every decision is about numbers, but it's often easier to be able to quantify things through cost, even things like control. To say, hey, if you can find some number you can throw to it, like, hey, if you don't do this customized version, then we need to have this much hours of support. Or we're going to have, if we use this vendor software, we're going to have maybe 3 incidents a year that we can't fix something ourselves, and on average we think that's going to cost 120 hours of our time hunting it down, and so the outage impact would probably be this, and you can put something together to throw a number to this. If you just want to be transparent in your numbers, that's the best thing you can do. And a lot of this comes from this idea of estimation, and we're going to talk about estimation. It's going to be a topic later on. It's not going to be something we jump into right away, but this is a way of turning these abstract concepts into something we can measure a little bit. We can have decisions back and forth. And then there's, as we said, the intangibles, the things that we can't weigh the same way. People have preferences. There might be some administrator, some executive that says, I love my iPhone and I want an iPhone app. And we could put numbers up and down that says, hey, we can do the same thing with HTML5. It's going to cost a lot less. It's going to be much easier. Nope, I need an iPhone app. I want to go to the App Store and see the My Company app out there, and I want that to be out there. So sometimes it's not about numbers. There's different weight factors. There's politics. There's prestige. There's security. There's legal. There's all these sorts of things that might come up and really change the way the decisions are made. So we want to quantify what we can. We want to put cost or time or effort or inconvenience into some equation. We want to weigh both of the options. We don't want to just say, hey, this is better because it costs this. We want to say, well, this option to buy costs X amount, and the option to build costs Y amount. But we also have considered some sort of hybrid option, which costs Z amount. And that's really the best approach. We put all the costs out there, and then we have the list of these intangibles, this other points that we can come back and forth, pros and cons, if you will, and then we can put that all in front and make a decision from there. And that's what we're going to be doing through this week. That's what we're going to talk about some more, is making that case and putting that forth to be able to convince somebody of the best way to realize the solution. This is pulling together the design, the requirements, a little bit of testing, and picking that right solution.